joining us today. I see familiar faces and new faces.
Yep.
We're very excited to have you. And I am just geeked to be with Dr. Gretchen on to have this joint session. We want it to be casual, but also informative. What's it say? Let's mute everyone. Well, oh, yeah. So while we're like demonstrating, if you guys can mute yourselves, or I'll mute you, either way, just because there'll be a lot of, noise and chatter. And like I said, so I'll help mute, but then we want you to converse with us during by asking questions. So let me start out. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mindy Eisenberg, and I'm really happy that you've signed on today to be with Dr. Gretchen and I. I am the director of Yoga Moves MS, and we are a nonprofit that provides adaptive yoga for individuals with MS, primarily. We also work with people who have Parkinson's or, similar, but they're all different, right? We're all different neuromuscular conditions. And so our main mission is to make sure that adaptive yoga is accessible to anybody who wants to do it. Our classes are donation only. We appreciate donations, but we don't require them. And our other mission is holistic health education. So we've been putting on a holistic health event every year, and Dr. Gretchen presented last year, and hopefully will again. We haven't talked yet, so I can't, She's smiling. That's a good sign. And so our other mission is to bring education to you, to people who are impacted by MS, that is a range on the healthcare and holistic care options. So anywhere from diet, exercise, acupuncture, you could name them to me, different psycho-emotional support. I'm really into mindfulness and meditation. So we're trying to bring education that you wouldn't normally see in the healthcare arena and put it together for you in a way that you can decide what's best for your health and wellness. Having said that, I know a lot of you know who Dr. Gretchen is, but I'm going to read her bio just to make sure that you really, really know how lucky we are to have her with us today. And I'm just going to start with that. Then we're going to get in with some demo. And as we demo, then we'll stop and ask for questions. We really want to hear what you're interested in. So, Dr. Gretchen, Dr. Holly began treating people with MS during her first year of practice and has since received her Multiple Sclerosis Certified Specialist certification. She developed an MS-specific physical therapy program in Wellesley, Massachusetts, and launched the Missing Link, the MS Link, get that? An online MS wellness program to make her offerings accessible to those worldwide. Dr. Holly also creates online content, including YouTube and Facebook videos, to share exercises and strategies for MS symptom management. She believes that knowledge is power, and it's her mission to help improve mobility and hope in as many people with MS as possible. So thank you, Dr. Gretchen, for doing what you do.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited that we're going to be doing this, because one of my favorite things about being a physical therapist, but especially a PT in the MS community, is brainstorming and truly adapting any exercise to any ability level. And that's what we're going to be doing today. So I'm really excited to get started.
All right. So without further ado, we're going to start with Dr. Gretchen. She's going to show you some moves, and that'll help spur conversation, because we are looking for your added questions and maybe your experiences with the pose. Or I'm saying the pose. I'm so used to saying pose with the exercise, with the practice.
Yes. So, and we have 4 different categories that we're going to be doing demonstrations for. So the first one is going to be marching, which is good for a bunch of things I'll share with you, but we're also going to touch on spasticity, balance, a couple of the main issues that a lot of people have with MS. But as Mindy said, if you guys have any questions, you can either type in the chat. Someone asked me if you could raise your hand. I think that, I don't know how to lower the hand, but you can try that or unmute yourself. So make sure my dog is out of the way. And I'm starting with one of my favorite exercises of all time. It's called marching. It's nothing crazy. You've hopefully seen this before, but I'm going to demonstrate various ways that you can do this. And before I demonstrate that, I just want to let you know that this marching movement is good for anyone who has a goal of improving your walking or stair climbing or getting into and out of a car, getting into and out of bed. This movement is used for so many things that we do throughout the day. So I'm going to move my camera, and I'll have to move it a few times because I'm going to be showing you in different positions. So let's make sure you can see. So anytime you're doing an exercise with a chair, make sure that it's a sturdy chair and it's nothing that has wheels. Okay, so for this marching movement, I always suggest starting in a seated position. And the reason I suggest that is because we sit so much throughout the day anyways. So you could be doing this as you are watching TV or as you're eating a meal or as anytime you're sitting. So when you're doing this in a seated position, the movement looks like this. So you just lift one leg up and then down, and then the other leg up and down. And I'll show you from this side just so you can get a true sense of what this looks like, but you'll notice that my toes are up. So let me switch to the side position. So it looks like this. I'm sitting up tall, my abs are tight, and I'm moving my leg up. My toes are not floppy. If they are floppy, that's okay. I always say it's a bonus if you can get your toes up, especially for those who have foot drop, and then the other side. And I want to point out right away, it is completely normal for one to not be as strong as the other. That's okay. Even if one leg has zero movement, that is still okay. Just practicing the movement gets your brain firing to find a neuroplasticity pathway to get your muscles stronger. So I could go on for about an hour about that. So this is option number 1. And if this is too challenging, there's so many ways that we can modify this. I'm going to show you what those are. First, you can lean back. And again, this is really important to make sure you don't have a wheeled chair, but lean back. Now your hips are coming from a more extended position. I'm hearing someone. Can we mute someone? I don't know if everyone else can hear that, but it looks like a phone that's not muted.
Yeah, I'm going to look around here.
Okay. Okay, so you're leaning back. Your hips are now from an extended position. So it's a little bit easier to do this movement, and you lift up from here. Again, if one side doesn't lift as high, that's okay. But this is one modification where if sitting up was too hard, you can modify it by leaning back. Another modification is in the standing position. And I often suggest not necessarily using a chair like this that can tip over, but something extra sturdy. But you're going to hold on. Now your hips are even more extended and you're marching like this. So for some people, standing, even though it requires balance, is actually a little bit easier. So you can march like this. Now, for some people, standing and sitting are too challenging. So I want to show you ways that you could actually do this on the ground, which if you're doing yoga anyways, you'll likely be either sitting or on the ground. So the first option, you're going to be laying on your back. And keep in mind too, I'm showing you on the ground, but this could be on a couch or on your bed. It doesn't literally have to be on the floor because I know standing up from the floor can be challenging. So you're on your back You can have a pillow, especially if you tend to get a little bit dizzy, and you march like this. And this. So just a little bit of movement, even if you just lift an inch or a few centimeters, that's still okay. Or you can go crazy and go really high. This is the same movement as what I was doing standing and sitting. And then the last variation I want to point out is when you're on your side. I like to prop my head up, but it can be on a pillow or laying down. And you can actually move your top leg up towards you and then down, and then towards you and down. Or you can use your bottom leg to help guide you and lift both up and down. So you can see I'm in a different position than we started, but the movement has been the same. In every single area and repetition I've done, my knee is coming up towards my shoulder. That hasn't changed. And if this is easier for you to do in this position, you'll be able to do more repetitions, and therefore that's more opportunities for your brain to find a pathway that works, and therefore you can get stronger there. So you can choose between any of those positions, and I always suggest choose the easiest. One is not better than the other. The one that's best for you is the one that's easiest, so you can do it more and more times over and over and over again. So that's my favorite marching exercise. Back up here.
So the only thing I would add, because we do that too in class, we probably got it from you, is that we'll add in like breath to it. And and it could be either way with lifting the leg, whether we're inhaling as we lift the knee or exhaling, because it can be work either way. So with yoga, the exhale, we're pulling the belly in and up at the end of the exhale. So that might be a nice way, if it's harder, you know, to lift the leg, then pulling the belly in and up on the exhale might be helpful to lift the leg. Generally, upward movements are inhales, but in this case, when we're looking to strengthen, it may be that we want the exhale, but it could easily be inhale. And then we'll add in a few things like perhaps pushing a hand into the thigh and then having a little bit of resistance. What do you think of that? So
I love that, because sometimes your brain works better if you give it that tactile feedback. So pushing into it, it almost tells your brain, hey, go against this movement, go against your hand. So that's a really good one.
Thank you for that. Tactile movement. You guys got that? And then sometimes we'll use either our hands underneath to kind of help lift it, and then lower it is another way of, so the focus will be pulling in and up, but also feeling the sensation of the foot touching the ground and kind of noticing which part of the foot drops first, whether it's the heel or the toe. And then, like you said, flexing is kind of a nice thing to do. If possible, it's an added bonus. And then one of our students showed me the walking, like using the wall. I love the chair as well, but she showed it like this. She was at PT and someone walked like this. So you can use the wall and travel back and forth. We call that mindful walking. So something like that. And then we can be conscious of like heel, ball, toe. Maybe adding in some arm movement. I love the one on the mat. I haven't done that a lot. That's a really good one with the lifting up and down. That's really nice. And you can really pull your belly in and press the ribs down as the leg comes up. And it really doesn't matter how high the leg goes.
Absolutely. And I love what you're mentioning too, in adding the breathing as well as using your core muscles, because a lot of the times when there is weakness, like hip flexor weakness for this specific exercise, using your abs can improve your strength. It gives you almost like a compensatory muscle that you can be using. So adding in the abs is really good idea.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? I'm just looking for anyone who's joined. We're trying to keep it muted so that everyone can hear. But now, if someone has a question,
awake. There's this.
We're gonna mute. Does anyone have any question about what Dr. Gretchen presented?
Oh, Mindy, this is Michelle. Why is the hip flexor such an issue with MS?
You want to address that, Dr. Gretchen?
So I don't know if there's a reason why any specific muscle is an issue, but there are specific muscle groups that tend to get weakest most often when it comes to multiple sclerosis, one of which is the hip flexors. It might be because it's such a major muscle group. So any layer of weakness in that muscle group, we will notice because we use it so often. Whereas there might be other muscles that have weakness, but we don't maybe use them as frequently. So it's less common, or not common, less, we don't care about it as much. But if your hip flexors are weak, we notice it. But in terms of why, I don't know if there's a reason why that specific muscle group is targeted.
But it's common. Is it? You
Very
see
common.
A lot?
Yeah, the others are, so the ones that I see most often and I work with my clients on is the hip flexors, which is like the marching exercise we just did, the knee flexors, so bending the knee, and then ankle dorsiflexors, which is lifting the ankle up. So if you have foot drop, that's the muscle group that's weak. So those are there's lots, but those are the most common.
And so this exercise addresses that.
Yes, and I could talk extensively about this, but I'll refrain. There's different strategies. So if you have weakness, one goal is to strengthen the weak muscle. Another goal is to compensate with other muscles that are strong. And I think both are good. It's never just one or the other. But for example, if you have, let's say if you have weak hip flexors, you would do the marching exercise to improve your hip flexor strength. But at the same time, when you're walking, you're also maybe exaggerating how much you bend your knee, because if you can bend your knee more, that can help compensate for weak hip flexors. So it's two different muscle groups, different joints, but we'd focus on both of them.
So bending the knee, which muscle is used for that?
A few, but mostly the hamstrings.
The hamstrings. And so is that an issue of strength, or is that an issue of possibly spasticity, to stretch it out to get the knee to help the knee to bend?
Yeah, good question. So it's hard to say. It could be one or it could be both. So if it's both, it could be weakness of the hamstring as well as tightness or tone or spasticity of the quads, which are on the front of the thigh. So if there's weakness involved and spasticity, you want to do stretching and strengthening, not just the strengthening component.
So someone asked, Jean asked, how can you suggest how many to do?
So this is a question I get all the time, and I realize people like having numbers, but when it comes to MS, so I will give you a number, but when it comes to MS, the quality is so much more important than the quantity. So yes. I never tell my clients, do 10 times 3 sets, or I never say like to do a specific repetition or a set, because if you do that, half of those might be bad quality. And if that's true, you're training your brain to do bad quality over and over and over again, which of course is not what we want. So the number that I give people, because I've been asked this enough times where someone's just like, tell me a number. So the number that I say is 30. Shoot for 30 perfect repetitions, or as close to perfect as you can get. And if 30 feels too easy, go for 40 or 50. If 30 seems too challenging, go for 15 or 20 or 25. But that might look like maybe your first set is 10, and then you take a break because you're getting fatigued, or maybe you noticed it was poor quality, so you take a break. Your second set might be 8 before you notice fatigue or poor quality. Your third set might be 5. Your fourth set might be 4. Your third set, so you might do 8 sets to get to 30. It doesn't matter. Your brain doesn't care. It just cares about repetition. So how many you do cumulatively? Good question.
You guys have great questions here. I can't keep up with these guys. Nadine, welcome. We've got Germany on. I always get excited when she comes on. Nadine's from Berlin, so it's later in the day for her. She says, is it enough to just think about lifting the leg, or is it preferable to lift it up by hand? I cannot lift one leg at all.
So this question goes right ahead of Nadine asked, how real is the idea of creating new neural pathways? That seems unreal to me. These two questions are very related, so I'll answer both all in one. So the idea of creating new pathways is very real. There's so many research articles out now that prove that neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to create new pathways, actually is real, and it does happen with good quality and repetition. Every time you try to do a movement, your brain is trying to find a new pathway to get down to that muscle. So Nadine, to answer your question, if you're using your hands 90% for 90% of the movement, like your hands are doing the most work, your brain's not trying as hard. Your brain is creating the strength in your arm to lift your leg, not necessarily in your hip flexors. So when you're doing this for a hip flexor strengthening exercise, I would suggest not using your hand. And even if there's very little or no movement, keep trying. Even if there's no movement, your brain is trying to find that pathway. But if you're doing this throughout the day, like let's say you need to get into your car because you're going somewhere, can you use your hands? My rule of thumb is attempt twice to not use your hands. And then if it doesn't work, go ahead and use your hands. You got to get into your car somehow. But attempting twice is telling your brain, hey, this is a moment where I should be using that strength that I'm trying to find. But if every time you go to move your leg, you're using your hands, your brain's not going to have that opportunity to find that neural pathway.
I love that idea of try first and then, 1 or 2 times. Yep. And that's a beautiful idea.
And even if like her end of the question said, I cannot lift one leg at all. Even if it's not gonna lift,
I want to stop there. We're not allowed. We are not allowed to say I can't in Yoga Moves classes.
I like that. So even though it might not lift, still try. It's not a matter of, maybe this time it'll work. No, it's just a matter of, I'm going to give my brain 2 times to try to find the pathway and then move on.
Yeah. And then the more you do it, the more that pathway. So just even visualizing lifting the leg, maybe closing your eyes and picturing lifting the leg and lowering it, is that stimulating a neural pathway?
Yes. And one thing too, one way, let me back up here, that you can tell if your leg doesn't move at all, there is a strategy you can use to tell if there is a neural pathway there at all or not. So what you want to do is use like 1 or 2 fingers and press, not in our hip crease, but right before it, down towards the knee. Press down as you attempt to lift your leg. And even if there's no movement, sometimes you can feel those muscles popping into your fingers.
And so then that there's already a pathway there? Yes.
And therefore, the pathway is there. It just has to get stronger. It's not that the muscle needs to get stronger yet. The pathway needs to get stronger. So practicing over and over and over again can help you with that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you can test it yourself. I know a lot of times in class, we'll tell students that we see movement or we can tell that they're using their muscles and they don't believe us. So I like that idea.
That happens to me too. And I'll have a client in front of me doing movement. I'm like, good job. And they're like, what are you talking about? It's not moving or it's not happening. I'm like, no, I see it. It is. So.
Anita asked about adding shoulder movement to the knee lifts. I'm not sure what she means because swinging, is that what you mean,
Yeah.
Anita?
Yeah, that's how I would interpret that question.
Okay.
No, I was
Oh.
thinking in terms of, all right, so as you step off to walk, your opposite shoulder begins to, you've got some torso rotation happening. So if you take and dip your shoulder in as you lift, you're getting a little bit of rotation, and it sort of enhances the movement of walking a little bit. And it doesn't even have to be a lot. It could just be a little dip to direct the cross, and then you've got cross body movement as well.
Yeah, and I think that brings the coordination into the question too, which coordination is a completely separate thing, and there's other exercises you can do for that, but I would consider that a coordination exercise as well, like doing the opposite shoulder at the same time as the opposite knee, because when you're walking, it's opposites. It's left leg, right arm, and vice versa.
Mhm.
So that's kind of prepping your brain for that movement. So I like that.
Mhm.
That's an awesome idea. See, this is what we mean about brainstorming.
Yeah, and just on the back, reclining those knee lifts. I was doing another kind of yoga, and the idea of not pressing so much, but pretending that you're trying to pick your leg up and it's stuck in gum or it's been glued to the floor. And then you feel that activation happen, whether or not you're really lifting. You feel it in your core, you feel it in your hip flexors. So there's a lot of awareness building.
I love that. And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because there's different strategies work for different people. So if you're trying to do that exercise, try exactly what Anita just said. Try picturing your foot is stuck in gum and lift it up. If that doesn't work, I've had a client say that what helped her was picturing balloons, like heavy balloons, or not heavy, balloons that'll lift your legs up as if your legs don't weigh anything. And as you go to lift, that balloon helps your leg lift. So try a bunch of different visualization thoughts as you're doing your exercises. They truly make a difference.
And that's fun, makes it fun.
Yeah.
Let's see, we have a question. If you have knee bone-on-bone arthritis, would doing these exercises be okay to do, or should you fix the knee and then exercise?
Oh, I love that question, because that is unfortunately very common, where, I mean, the idea that people with MS are only struggling with the MS is just so crazy. There's other things that our bodies go through. It's never just one thing. It's also orthopedic conditions as well. So marching should be okay for someone with bone-on-bone arthritis. Did they say the knee? Yes, I'm assuming that's for the knee, because your knee's not moving. However, for things like straightening your knee and bending your knee, straighten and bend, that is probably going to bother a knee that has bone-on-bone arthritis. So instead, just holding the knee out. Or another exercise that I sometimes like to do is squats, because that'll help you stand up, but I would suggest a squat hold. So you hold the position. It's not a bunch of repetitions of up and down of that knee moving. That's going to bother someone with arthritis. But a hold usually doesn't bother it as much. So there are different strategies where you can still exercise, even if that is an issue.
Can you demonstrate what you mean by a squat? I just want to see.
Of course.
Because the yoga squat might be different than the physical therapy squat. I'm just curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I consider a squat, I'll show you from this side so I think you can see a little bit more clearly. So the way that I think everyone should squat is you starting off in a standing position, your butt goes back first and your shoulders stay forward. If they don't stay forward, that's when you go to sit down, you're going to plop back. So for safety reasons, shoulders stay forward, and then you just, standing too close to the chair, bend your knees as low as you can go comfortably. And maybe you stop here and then you stand up. Or maybe you go all the way down to your chair and then up. Or maybe, so the distance doesn't really matter, but it's hinge your hips, abs are tight, and you just bend your knees from here. Back is flat, you're not rounding at all. But doing this over and over again, for some, my knees are bending and then straightening, that's going to bother someone who has arthritis in their knees. So I always suggest a squat hold. So go a distance that you feel like you could stay. It's not going to kill you to just stay here for a bit and just stay. And maybe you stay for 20 seconds or 30 seconds or a minute versus a bunch, and I'm going fast now just to demonstrate, but versus a bunch of bending and straightening.
That reminds me of chair pose.
So with chair pose, I'd love to know how you would instruct someone and demonstrate that.
Okay, so we got lots of yogis who know this pose. I love how you said hold it a minute. I think they turn off Zoom if I had them hold it a minute.
I recently did an exercise challenge with some friends, and it was a squat hold. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I can probably do this for about 2 minutes. I think I got to 50 seconds, and I was like, my legs were shaking. I had to stop very quickly.
Yeah, it's building up strength. It's important to do every day, though, to build these quads. So it's similar. We might start, sometimes we start from standing and sometimes we start from seated, depending upon, if someone's feeling like standing or they'd rather start seated, and we'll mix it up. And we'll tell people to just rock forward and back at first, and then get a little bit of rhythm and just kind of feel the sensation of rocking forward and back. Definitely what you said, keeping the shoulders and the back. And then we might say, come up for like a breath and inhale, hold it, exhale, slowly lower down so we're not banging down. And we'll play with how long we hold it. We'll play with where we take our arms, whether they're forward. Butt is always back. When in doubt, stick your butt out. And we might play with swinging the arms forward and back. I always love it back because you can feel your shoulder blades on your back, and maybe pretend you're holding a beach ball back there. And then we will slowly lower down. We use yoga props to put in between the thighs and come towards the edge of the seat. And maybe play this way so you're hugging your inner thighs into the block. We find this helps balance. And you can also start from standing and then slowly lower it down. And so this will help. You know how sometimes knees come inwards? So it helps the knees stay forward over the middle toes. And another idea that we use, and sometimes we do these in combination, is to put a strap around the thighs. Takes a little bit more time. But we put it around the thighs, and that way we're pressing out into the strap. Sometimes we do both, block and strap. So this is getting at working to press outward. The other way, we're hugging the inner thighs in. Now we're doing the outer, and same thing. And then we can play with how long we hold it. I love the idea. I saw this at a yoga therapy training once. They were using a stick, not a cane, but I love using our props that we use all the time. So the cane is nice to hold forward like this. And it gives you something to reach, but at the same time, we're taking the buttocks back and down. Do you use that instruction to take the toe down?
Yep, absolutely.
And then the other thing, we'll use the wall, like do the chair pose at the wall, with or without the blocker strap. So the wall is a really nice prop too.
Yeah.
So you could stay here a long time, or a very short time, take a break, and then come back into it. I was once at a training where they had us hold it for 9 minutes. That was pretty crazy. That was really nutty. And
that
then,
is crazy.
we might add in twists while doing it too, but that's just getting really funky.
Yeah, and oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you say.
I was going to say, I think that, a lot of people think that an exercise is just one movement, like a squat is for your quads or your glutes. But especially when there's weakness involved, use the other muscles that might be stronger to help you do the movement. So I love the one with the strap. It does take a little bit of work to get it around your legs, but pushing your legs out against something. Now, instead of mostly just using your quads or your hamstrings, you're using the entire outside of your thighs, which can help if there's weakness in your hip flexors or your quads or glutes. So I love that. Also, what a lot of people forget is physics. And based on our alignment alone, that can help us have balance in a squat position. So all of those ones that Mindy suggested with your arms forward, based on physics, if more of your body weight is forward, you can't plop backwards and fall.
Yeah.
Similarly, if your body weight isn't forward, you're probably not going to be able to stand up out of a chair. So getting your body weight forward and having your arms forward can really, really help. So yeah, all of these modifications can really make a big difference, especially if you're someone who maybe hasn't been able to stand up in a while, sit comfortably or with good strength. Or if you're someone where every time you sit down, you tend to plop, you know, use some of these strategies.
I love that. I love that. You know, in yoga squat, like the traditional squat looks like this, but I rarely teach that because that, you know, like if you were one of those kids like me who like to sit like this, like for me, I could sit here forever. This is a great place to be, but some people are like, no, thank you. And I want people to be safe as well. But we might try something like, and the chair would be against the wall and not just free here, but you want to make sure it's safe. And then maybe take the feet wider and go down a little bit and come back up. So that's why I was asking you about what you meant by squat, but really, so you're saying we're working our quads, we're taking our buttocks back.
Yeah. And one thing I like to point out is, yes, we're doing that squat or chair pose, whatever you want to call it, as an exercise, but you should be using that same strategy, that same technique every time you go to sit down in any chair or your couch or the toilet, or to pick something up. It's not just an exercise. That's actually how you should be moving throughout the day anytime you need to bend down. Yeah,
sometimes we call it potty pose. Because we're doing this pose every day, several times a day.
Yes.
Anytime we sit down.
One question I see too. So it says, when I lift my left leg, and I'll demonstrate this. I think it's going to make more sense. When I lift my left leg, I use my right side of my back. How can I strengthen the leg so I don't hurt my back? So this is a really good question because it's very common. So I'm going to demonstrate just for those that are having a hard time visualizing what this question is. So again, I'll use the chair just for balance. So I think what they're meaning is, so this is my left side. I don't know if I'm mirror image from you guys, but this is my left side. This is my right side. So the issue is the left leg has a hard time maybe bending or lifting or something coming through. So they use their opposite hip, like back, to lift. And if I'm interpreting this question incorrectly, let me know in the chat. But oftentimes our low back, either right here or here, can do a lot of compensatory movements to try to lift our hip to get our leg through. Because you notice if I do that, I didn't bend my knee at all, but now my leg can swing through. So if you have difficulty bending the knee or bending the hip, simply lifting up is one of the first strategies that you can use to get that movement done. What you'd want to do to not use your back, and I think someone else asked, like any exercise for back pain, if the back pain is stemming from leg weakness, so your back is overcompensating, you want to strengthen the muscles that are responsible for walking, which is really challenging. But what you need is you need to be able to bend your knee, scoop your toes up, and bring your knee up. There's more movement than that, but just for that phase of walking, those are the things. So you could practice bending your knee. And again, there's like a ton of different positions you could practice that in. You need to practice lifting your toes up. And there's a bunch of different positions that you can practice that in. You can practice the marching, which we already demonstrated, all the different positions. But strengthening the individual muscles that are responsible for that movement is what you need to do. And I think that a lot of people overlook that. A lot of people just think, okay, my walking isn't great, I'm going to practice walking. And yes, you should practice walking, but break down the movements that are required for walking and see which ones, and maybe it's one or several, which ones are the most challenging. That's what you need to practice as your exercise, because that's what's causing these other muscles to overcompensate in the difficulty walking. And it might even be balance. Maybe your strength is decent, but it's the balance that's throwing you off.
That is an excellent idea, to really divide it up.
I do every single movement like that. I ask all of my clients what their goals are, and most of them are walking, so we do a lot of that. But sometimes it's standing up from a chair, and I think I've broken it down into like 6 different exercises that you could do just to improve your strength with standing up and sitting down. So like just breaking apart every goal, every activity into those different movements.
So which muscles is that's getting sore and overworked?
Usually if it's that back side one, it's the quadratus lumborum, or you'll also hear it as referred to the QL. That's usually one of the ones.
All right, let's see. Other questions here. I have clients who can not raise their legs. I have them keep their toes on the ground and raise their knees with toes on the ground, raising the heels. That's cool. Yeah, it helps them feel successful and activates quads.
Yeah, and it also activates the calf muscles too, which are also required for walking. So 2 in 1.
Perfect. I like to do stretches on the floor, but I have a hard time getting up. Any tips to make a better movement?
I like to do stretches. Oh, but I have a hard time. So this is another. So in my program, I have a whole section that it's called task specific exercises, and it takes these tasks like getting down to the floor, standing up from the floor, getting into and out of a car, like these activities throughout the day. And it does exactly what we're talking about, where we break them down into different exercises that you can do. So if you're doing stretches on the floor, but have a hard time getting up, any tips? So to get up, it depends how you're getting up. There's many different ways that you can get up. So it really depends on what, and the way that people choose is dependent on where their strength is. So everyone's going to be a little bit different. But practicing getting up as an exercise is something I would do. And sometimes, dependent on the way that you get up, you need to be able to bring one leg forward, which requires that marching movement. So practicing marching, maybe even seated in a chair, but that can actually help with standing up. Or if you're sitting on your butt and it's difficult for you to roll over onto your hands and knees, practicing rolling over onto your hands and knees as an exercise. So you're taking
That's
that
awesome.
movement of
that could be really tiring right there.
Yeah, it is tiring because it's hard. So the exercises are going to be challenging.
I love that idea. We got to add that one in, guys.
I see a question too. So Tom, can you offer help for me when I walk with my rollator, my triceps start hurting? The reason your triceps, and I want to mention this because I hear often my triceps hurt, my shoulder, my elbow, my wrist, my hand, like something in the arm hurts when they're using an assistive device, whether it's a rollator, a cane, a trekking pole. The reason for that is you're putting too much weight. Either you're putting too much body weight through the rollator, which means several things, but mostly balance isn't great. So you should be focusing on balance, or those movements that I demonstrated for walking are so weak that you're kind of hinging forward. And so practicing those movements, those same ones, are going to help you get stronger and get more balance so that you don't have to put as much weight on the device. Also, it's a habit. When we have a device in front of us, immediately we put a lot of weight through it, just without even thinking. And my dad recently got toe surgery, and he's normally very active, no issues, but he couldn't walk on that foot for 2 weeks. And so I went over, I gave him a rollator. I was like, use this. And he went literally, like, he's normally up tall. And I saw him when I gave it to him, and he was standing up like this, but with more weight on this side because he couldn't put that weight down. I gave him a rollator. Immediately, he does this. I'm like, no, you can hold your rollator and stay up here. I didn't say to hunch over, like your hand stays here. So like fixing, and this is hard, but fixing that habit, your brain is in a habit of putting that much weight through the rollator. When you take weight off of the device, whether it's a rollator or whatever, if you do notice, I don't feel as steady, this isn't safe for me, then that's when you got to practice balance. You got to practice the individual strengthening exercises that make up walking. So I think that's really important because people can end up with shoulder injuries, elbow injuries, wrist injury. And if it's injured, then you can't use that device, at least temporarily. So, you know, knowing the right exercises to do, whether it's strengthening, stretching, balance, is really, really important.
That's really key. Let's see, there's another question, then maybe we'll go over balance a little bit since you were just talking about that. Marcia says, can you use your strap under your foot to help with raising your leg while in the chair?
Use your strap under your foot. Yes, I have my answer, and Mindy might respond differently, but my answer would be yes. And oftentimes, if it's a resistance band, so not necessarily one of the yoga straps that's not stretchy, if it's a resistance band, I will actually sometimes have people use the resistance band for their first set and then get rid of it, and your leg will actually move better because it had that assistance. Now it knows what your brain wants it to do. So sometimes I'll use that strategy.
So the resistance band, can you explain why that is?
Yeah, so it's the same thing. Like sometimes your leg won't move that well, but if you have assistance of any kind, whether it's a resistance band or if I was there helping you lift for your first 10 repetitions, whatever it is, if you have that assistance, you're getting that feedback loop. So your brain says, lift your leg, it travels down the neural pathway, but the leg doesn't actually lift. So it went there, but it didn't happen. So having that assistance means it went there and it worked and it's coming back up. So you're closing that feedback loop. So that's the power of having some type of assistance.
Yeah, but so now you want it stretchy rather than firm like a yoga strap.
Right. So if the person's referring to a yoga strap that's not stretchy, my answer would be the same as Nadine earlier of try it without. But then if you want to use it after the fact, just to see if you can get some movement, go for it. And if when you're using the yoga strap, like a non-stretchy strap, if you're feeling it as an arm exercise, then consider that an arm exercise. Don't consider that a hip flexor exercise because you're not necessarily using your hip flexors, you're just using your arms. So you wouldn't want to cheat yourself by saying, I did my hip flexor exercise today, if that you really felt that in your arms because your hip flexor wasn't moving well.
Thank you, Dr. Gretchen. And then one of your followers was telling Lauren how to get information about getting in and out of the tub, that you have that on your Instagram. So that's excellent. Let's go over some balance poses. So you have lots of little tricks on that Instagram. Like, you guys aren't on Instagram, you got to follow Dr. Gretchen because she's got little tricks and tips on there.
Yeah, and there's so many tips and tricks to do just day-to-day things as we've been talking about on this call. So, and I'll demonstrate a few different balance ones. This will help with, I think it was Lauren's question about getting out of the tub. It will help with walking. It will help with any time you feel off balance or balance is required. So anytime before I move my chair to look back to make sure my dog isn't sitting right behind me.
Don't move the chair.
Sure. Right. So, I'm sorry. There's so many different positions. Again, balance is one of those things where people think my balance isn't good. Let me practice standing on 2 feet with my eyes closed. And that's a whole different story. That's helpful for other reasons. But when you think about walking, let's use walking. That's the best example. If I'm move this over here. If I'm walking forward, I need to move my leg and those same movements that we talked about before, but all while this leg is moving forward, I'm standing on one leg, which means I need single leg balance. So balancing in any way, this leg can be off the ground, however is easiest for you, but balancing on one leg. And even if you use an assistive device, if you use a rollator, a cane, trekking poles, that means that you never are truly on one leg because you have your assistive device, but the worse your balance is on one leg, the more weight you're going to put through your device. So you still need as best balance as you can on one leg, even if it's for 1 second or 2 seconds or 5 seconds. So you need single leg balance, in which case, hold on to something steady, get your leg off the ground in whatever way is easiest for you. For some that's back, for some that's bringing it forward, for some that's out to the side. But balance on one leg, this knee is slightly bent, it's not locked. And then if you can, let go with one hand. If your balance is good enough, also let go with another. Ooh. And how long can you stand here for? So that's one. But another example, while I'm walking, I'm also in a staggered stance. It's impossible to move forward without being in a staggered stance. So standing in this position is a balance exercise that you can do. If it's too hard, still staggered, but wider. If it wasn't that challenging, scoot it in a little bit closer, not necessarily tandem, but scoot it in a little bit closer. And same thing on the other side. So when you are walking, those two are, my desk, something almost fell. When you're walking, those two are the absolute requirements. So practicing those as part of your exercises, or so to demonstrate or to explain the video that I think Lauren might be referring to, I demonstrated two ways that are not the best to get into a tub or a shower, and then one way that is good. One way that people often try is, sorry for making you guys dizzy over here. If you pretend that there's the tub's right here and there's something I have to step over, a lot of times people will try to practice doing this, which requires single leg balance and hip flexion and abduction, like so much movement and balance that's really hard. Another time, or another type, is people will sit on the edge and try to lift their leg like this. That's even hard for me. Like you really have to use your core, your hip flexors. So that's really hard. And then the third one that I demonstrated is the one that I suggest. So you sit at the edge, so you're not working on balance at all. You do need core strength. You straighten one leg, which requires quad strength, and then you just shimmy it over and down. That required zero hip flexion. It didn't. So for those of you who have difficulty flexing your hips, you use your quads and then your abductors, and then down. And then same thing. And a lot of people in that video were asking, on Instagram, your videos can only be so long, so you have to pick and choose what you want to show. But a lot of people said, well, how do I get out? Same thing, straighten, out, straighten, out. And then, because you've been practicing chair pose and squats, then you stand up using those strategies that we've been talking about on here.
We integrate that all together.
Yeah, and there's other ways too. If you have a shower chair, that's obviously the best because that's the safest. Or if you are working with an occupational therapist, they can come into your bathroom and share different devices. They have grab bars that you can use. So it's not the one and only way. It's just a way if you don't have tools like a shower chair or grab bars, things like that.
That's awesome. Well, so you remind me when you're doing some of these exercises of some of the yoga balance poses, like tree pose or spinal balance. So I'll just show it a few of those so you can see. And one that I thought of while you were showing the walking of the transition like that, I know they can't see my feet. I moved the computer a little bit there. So this is pyramid pose. And we can take it wider or narrower, like really narrow, that's like a balance beam. So we usually tell people to go wider, but this is also really nice for the back and the hip. because some people were asking about back pain. So a little bit of wall dog is always really nice. And then something like this we might play with for balance too, like just lifting. The toe may still be down. And just like you said, not locking the standing knee or the standing leg. And so you could play here. This is a version of Warrior 3. And then we can even, depending upon how balance is feeling, maybe take an arm out to the side. Maybe not. So, because that looks really similar to spinal balance. Oops, I'm gonna kick into Zafus or something. But so playing here, you know, with one hand forward, one leg back, up or down. We do all kinds of variations like that. And we also there's so many different yoga poses that are balance poses, but tree pose is one that's pretty common that you guys have seen. I know I keep playing here a little bit, but tree pose can be being against a wall and then maybe toes on the ankle or shin, or using a chair or 2 chairs or a wall and a chair and playing with where the foot goes. Those are all, you know, we do all kinds of things with our hands to play with balance. Another trick, I was at a yoga therapy conference and it was a PT. She said to do, this is called Yana Mudra, where you take your pointer finger and thumbs together, and that helps balance.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain why that would be? Is that because the focus is?
You know, I don't know if this is related or not, but one thing that I've learned, I don't know, it wasn't in PT school, but I learned that in order for our brain to have a better sense of safety, all it requires is one point of contact.
Oh.
Like if you have a table nearby that you're using for balance, just place one, don't put your whole hand on it, just one finger. So that, I don't know if that explains, like if you squeezing, your brain thinks that's a point of contact.
It's very cool, you know, just using your hands in a certain, this is Hakini Mudra, and this is actually a balance mudra. You know, people do this when they do it instinctively, or even this when they're thinking, you know, but this can help balance, just playing around with something like this. And we tell people even seated that depending upon how they're feeling, this could be a balance pose to lift the leg like you were showing. So this is spinal balance in the chair.
Absolutely. And another thing too, which I see we're running out of time, so I'll mention this quickly, but another thing that we didn't even touch on, in order to balance, you also need to, what I call weight shift. If you keep moving my dog, if you're practicing, if your goal, get this out of the way, is to balance on one leg, if I don't shift, right now, ideally 50% of my weight is here and 50% is here. If I keep 50-50 and I lift this leg up to balance over here, I'm going to fall towards that side. Oops, now the other dog's barking. So
that's okay. We know they're our furry friends.
If I want to balance here, I need to shift my weight over here. So for some people, just having like 90% of your weight on one side and 10% on the other, that's challenging enough. So before you even practice a balance pose or a tree pose, just practice shifting 90% of your weight over to one side. If that's too easy, go for 100%. If that's too hard, go for 60 or 70 or 80%. So weight shifting is another really important thing that I don't think is talked about enough.
That's awesome. One last question. Is there anything beyond physical training to reduce fatigue?
Well, so I know this doesn't answer the question directly first, but I'll get to your question. Exercise, research shows that to reduce fatigue, whether it's primary fatigue or secondary fatigue, low to moderate exercise is a good strategy, which sounds counterintuitive because a lot of people, when they're having those days or weeks, you feel like, how the heck am I supposed to exercise? I can't, I'm so fatigued. But even something like just sitting, light punches forward, you can do this in bed. Just movement has been shown in research to help fatigue. However, this person asked, beyond physical training, there are medications for fatigue as well. It's definitely something you should talk to your neurologist about because there's lots of different strategies. I don't know enough about acupuncture, if that helps with fatigue, or if there's other more like holistic for fatigue.
Yeah, I mean, I always feel very recharged. I go regularly, and you feel energy running through you more. I usually sleep better the night that I have it, or maybe even for that whole week. Like sometimes I go just for like a routine, I'll notice that I'm not sleeping well, and then I'll go and I'll have a much better night of sleep. So I think the quality is better. And I have to add in that yoga is awesome for fatigue, and meditation. Different breathing exercises are helpful to help us find that homeostasis, or to help relax us so that we do sleep better. There's all kinds of restorative yoga. And my go-to is to put your feet up on the chair or up the wall. Candlestick pose. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, because that just really helps relax the nervous system. It can be a lot of work to get your feet up a wall. So if that's kind of daunting, even in bed, putting your feet up on the bedboard behind you or the wall behind you, if your bed is against a wall, is a nice way to go. But putting your feet up on a chair or a bunch of bolsters is super nice. There's all these great restorative poses. Spinal twist can be very energizing to do both ways, and stay in it for a while. If you're doing it at home and you're in bed and you do a spinal twist, you stay there for a few minutes and then go to the other side. So restorative yoga can be a way to recharge as well.
Yeah, that's good. There's so many, so it's so cool, like brainstorming with other people, because there's so many, and I run support groups as well, and I love, everyone just shares, what works for them, and it's things that you may not have thought of, and you can bring those to your neurologist and try that. Or if it's something like a pose, try that. There's so many different ways. Never think there's only one way to do something, or one way to get stronger, one way to walk better, get your balance. There's lots of different ways that can be adapted to you and the day that you're having, whether it's a good day or a bad day.
Yes. There's a question about what kind of breathing helps. So I definitely want to answer that. Breathing in general, a yoga breath, and there's a fantastic book out by James Nestor called Breathe. It came out during COVID, and I was just in awe of this book. And he talks about the power of the breath, and just learning how to breathe in a functional way can change how we feel. So finding a complete breath, it's helpful to learn from a yoga teacher or someone who knows breathing well. But to practice that even a few minutes a day, and then it starts to become more of a habit. And it is something, even though breathing is involuntary, we actually can control it. The more we breathe in and out through our nose, he emphasizes this so much, and we know this from yogic breathing. Breathing in and out through the nose as opposed to breathing out through the mouth is so much more helpful for our energy level.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You got to read this book. It's amazing. But I think it ties together a lot of what yogis have already known about the breath thousands of years ago, and we're catching up with them. It's incredible. It's incredible. He goes through a whole anthropological view and perspective on our facial structure. All different kinds of strategies for breathing are kind of summarized in there, but we practice that in yoga. It really is the first and foremost foundation. So important. If you do nothing else, practicing some good diaphragmatic, full, complete breaths in and out through the nose, that is extremely helpful. Yeah. So, Dr. Gretchen, we better tell them about our prize before we get off of here. Yes, it's James Nestor, and it's called Breathe. Good question. Is it breathe or breath? I think it's breathe. but you will find it because it's all over the internet. You will find it, or email me and I'll be happy to give you the link.
Yeah, so we are actually doing two giveaways. So one of them is specifically for everyone who is on this call. So hopefully everyone has stayed around. So we'll share with you what that is. And then if you don't win, we're also doing another one over on social media on Instagram. So if you are on Instagram, you can feel free to enter that one. So Mindy, do you want to go over what the giveaway is?
I absolutely do. So those of you who don't know our adaptive yoga cards, it comes in a deck, and I'm very proud because our students are all over these cards. So people with MS are all over them. And they're on the fronts and they're on the backs, and they're divided into standing, seated, and on the mat. So they're color coded. And so each pose has like one way to do it on the front, and then on the back has a few different other options depending upon how you're feeling that day, whether you want to go down on the mat or whether you want to stay in the chair. And it comes with a little wellness booklet that also describes the yogic breath. And it'll give you a few tips on how to choose which cards, a few different sequences for how you might develop a little practice for yourself at home.
Awesome.
Yeah,
and I personally have those, and I love them because, again, every day is different. And so you can pick, and I would encourage you too, for if you already have them or if you're the winner, try a different one each day depending on how you're feeling. Don't always go for the same one. So that's going to be part of the giveaway. And then I am also adding on to that one complimentary month of the missing link, which is my online MS wellness program. So that is the program that includes a whole bunch of videos and demonstrations on MS specific exercises for strengthening and balance and walking, and that category that I mentioned earlier with that task specific exercise where I demonstrate the different exercises and how to do the movement of getting down to the ground, standing up from the ground, getting into a car, getting in and out of bed. So all those different things. We also have guest speakers every month from other MS experts like neurologist. Mindy was on, she was one of our guest speakers. Research updates is just a whole holistic wellness program for people with MS. So we are going to pick
generous
a winner.
of you. Very exciting.
Yes. So one of my amazing assistants is actually on this call, and she actually put everyone's name. So if you're on this call now, you were already entered, whether you knew it or not, to this giveaway. And so I'm going to announce our winner, who is on right now. So the winner is Mary Melaragni. I don't know if I'm butchering your last name. I apologize if I am. Yay, I see her waving her hand. Awesome, Mary. So you are our winner. Congratulations. If you didn't win and you want to get in again, find us on Instagram and you can enter to win. But Mary, we will be in touch with you about how to actually get the cards, get the program, and all of that. So thank you everyone for joining. I think that this topic isn't talked about enough, and knowing all of these different ways that you can move and adapt exercises based on what your goals are and what your ability levels are each day can be empowering, and it gives you a little bit more control in what often feels like a very difficult to control disease. So thank you for joining.
Thank you so much. We're so appreciative. Dr. Gretchen, thank you for agreeing to do this with me as part of our MS Awareness Month conversation series, and I'm kind of calling them fireside Zoom chat series. It's very special to have you on for this amount of time to ask you questions like this. It's been really, really wonderful. So I'm so appreciative. At the end of a yoga session, we always say namaste. So namaste to all of you for joining us on this Saturday of MS Awareness Month, and much gratitude to all of you for joining us. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
And we just have people too in the chat asking our Instagram name. So Mindy is at Yoga Moves MS, and mine is at Dr.Gretchen. So we will each have a post up. Mine's not up yet, but it will be posted with the giveaway. So that's where you can find us over there.
All right. We look forward to announcing the next winner.
Yes. Bye, everyone. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Take
ladies.
care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's great to see all of you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.